I'm Marcus Blake here at the studio at That Nerd Show, and we're doing a virtual film festival interview, and we are speaking with the director, Jennifer Taylor. And I am pronouncing that correctly, or you had three names, right?
Yeah, I have a middle name. It's Maytorena. It's my other second family name.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were getting that right based on the notes we were giving. Okay. And we're going to be speaking about your film, For the Love of Rutland. All right. So, very interesting film, I guess, kind of the times dealing with opiate crisis, but at the same time, refugees from Syria. How did this project come about for you?
Well, I lived in Rutland for a good part of my childhood after my family moved there from California. So I'd always been really interested in what made a small town tick, especially one in the Northeast, because my family's like 100% Californian. And one of the things that really struck me growing up was that the town, like I think a lot of small towns, had a very strict class structure. And so people at the very bottom of that class structure are treated often pretty harshly. And that was the case in this town. So I'd always wanted to make a film about the experience of what that must be like. And when the mayor a few years ago announced the town was going to invite Syrian refugees in, to help the town revitalize itself, especially after it had been through this hell of the opioid crisis, it occurred to me that might be an opportunity to tell that story and to potentially find somebody whose experience might speak to those different issues.
Okay. I thought it was kind of interesting that you kind of start with a town that, you know, is dealing with an opiate crisis and doesn't often get talked about as much, you know, when it comes to drugs.
Yeah.
But it's also, I feel like, a lot more prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to get addicted to opiates, especially if you're dealing with, you know, working class town and unemployment and just harsh conditions. What do you felt like was more fascinating in dealing with it? Was it that, or was it the fact that they were bringing in Syrian refugees?
It was kind of both things at once, to tell you the truth. And the thing about this particular town that I think has happened in a lot of places where the opioid epidemic's been terrible is it actually reached everybody. It was hitting every, you know, echelon of the town society, including people who are very well off. It was just everywhere. And I think that the town has just been through actually a lot of trauma from that, which I think a lot of communities have. So when the refugee resettlement was suggested as a way to revitalize the town, you know, that, you know, kind of kicked off this huge ideological firestorm of people who either were for or against, and they really took it, I think, to some really deep place about who they were, you know, ideologically. Right. That all was fascinating to me. But what was most fascinating was to find a person like Stacey Griffin, the woman who's the main protagonist, who wasn't signing on to either side, and who was kind of, in a certain sense, calling BS on both sides and saying, this is, you know, these are real people's lives, whether it's someone who's been struggling with opioid addiction and poverty, or whether someone who's been displaced by war. These are real lives that people have, and they don't fit into a neat, you know, political box. You know, so I think that to me was the real point of the film.
Yeah, I think we often forget that you know, the one thing that it kind of brings us all together is that human element, that anything can affect anybody. It doesn't have to do with race, gender, your politics, your religion, you know, even your money.
Yes.
And I always found that interesting with drugs. Like, yes, you can have poor people addicted and rich people.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
You talk about being from California and, you know, coming to the Northeast. Was it a huge culture shock for you?
Yeah, it was. It was for all of us. My dad's family in particular, my dad's family's, my dad's dad his family's from Mexico. And so we like for many generations, my family's from Northern Mexico, Southern California. So yeah, it was very odd. But we treated it kind of as an adventure. We always went back and forth to California too, growing up. But, you know, it was like to us kind of an adventure to be somewhere, you know, like essentially a farming community, where people just, you know, they have really different ways of being than what we were used to. And, you know, we made it fun, I think, as a family. It was like an adventure. So yeah, it was, but it was different, and I think it was partly what made me want to make a film about the community was I knew that not everybody experiences living in such a small community. You know, this town has 15,000 people, that pretty much everybody knows each other. And so whatever happens in one part of the town somehow will affect another part. Just, you know, like we're talking about, like the opioid crisis. Like it didn't just stay in the poor part of town. It hit everybody hard. So. Oh, we froze. Oops.
Okay, I'm sure we only have like a few minutes here, so let's do this. I can just cut this part out because it was still recording. But I want to get to I'm going to ask two questions. What was, how do I rephrase this? The Syrian refugees that are, you know, kind of the subject of everything. What was the biggest thing for them to, you know, come out of this story?
That's a good question. You know, there's only 3 families ended up coming to the town out of the 25 that had been expected, and that was because of the, you know, change in the federal government's approach to refugee resettlement. The families have all settled in really, really well to the town, and it's kind of like nothing really happened. Like, you know, people thought, oh, they're going to save the town, they're going to ruin the town. No, they just moved to the town. There's one family in particular that Stacy and I both became close to. And, you know, we hung out a lot and spent a lot of time together, and they're really amazing, great people. They didn't really want to be on camera that much because I think they just wanted to be,
right.
Like, they've been through so much trauma, which is why you barely see them in the film. So I think for them, the big thing that's come out of all of this is probably whatever sense of normalcy they've been able to get. I think has been finally achieved after they got a lot of intensive media scrutiny. So I had to be very careful about filming with them.
Well, and that's the political culture that we've lived in for the last 4 years.
Yes.
And coming to the States, what was I'm curious to know, what was the one thing that they discovered that they really kind of liked about America, you know, from food, movies, entertainment, just anything, something that they kind of grabbed hold of and like, we really like this?
Well, what I know of the 3 families who've come is that the main thing is they liked having their own home and a place that where they could essentially rebuild their lives. They, you know, really lost everything. There's the one family in particular that became close to Stacy, lost their businesses, they lost their home. I mean, they told me, you know, we didn't include it in the film, of course, out of respect for them and their privacy, but like they literally had to climb over dead bodies to get out of, you know, the town that they'd been living in that had been destroyed. So I think for them, it was just a sense that no one was going to come and hurt them. And they've actually, you know, had a really, for the most part, positive reception in the town. And I think that's the thing, is even the people in the film who were in the abstract, you know, hating on refugees and saying, we don't want them here. Like when the people came, they were like, oh, this guy's like an accountant. Okay, whatever.
You mean they might be just like us, struggling?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think that's the thing. Right? It's like we're all driving ourselves crazy. We're all like splitting ourselves into camps and, you know, pointing the finger at each other. You're the enemy. And it's like, come on, guys.
It's funny to talk about that issue because, you know, here in Texas, I mean, well, it's slowly gravitating more blue. You know, you still get those down the wall conservative. I mean, extreme right. There's a family that I know that not too far from my house it's 3 families who run separate businesses all in a little strip mall. It's a computer shop, a feed store, an Ethiopian restaurant, and a tax office. All right there. And these are people that have been, in America for a while now. Their daughters, have gotten an education in American school, but they still practice their religion. All they wanted was to come, provide for their family,
Yeah.
and not be harmed or have the government interfere. So, and I always laugh when I have to buy computer parts from him. He's like, "I'll make you a good deal." They're always haggling, and then it turns into, let's talk European football or whatever. And like this is the same thing for every American. We're all just struggling.
Exactly. And we all just want to be okay. I mean, especially right now, we've got this pandemic, we've got, so much uncertainty. And hopefully we can relate, to that feeling of what the hell it must feel like that you can't keep your kids safe.
Right.
It's just, could we just kind of ratchet down the rhetoric on all sides,
right.
and just, just kind of treat each other like humans. I mean, the best thing that happened, we didn't film it, but was one day Stacy and one of the families and I, we just made a huge barbecue. And they came and they brought all this amazing food and we just barbecued and just hung out and the kids played ball with my nephews. It was great.
Like normal people. How about that? We're not that different.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right. So here is your nerdy question. I know we love to ask all of our filmmakers. If you could have from within the nerd universe a weapon of choice or a superpower to fight the forces of evil, what would you choose?
Oh, I would take all of Captain Marvel's powers. Which seem to be everything.
Right. Yeah.
She seems to be the one that just at the end of the Avengers is the one who comes in and just wipes everybody out. So that's what I would take. Plus I think her suit is the most bomb ass. So that would probably be the one. So that's a very vague answer, I suppose, but I would just take it all.
I mean, she is pretty much like the Superman or Supergirl of the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
So it's still a great answer. And I always laugh at, people in the nerd culture who argue that wasn't really a good movie and you had to do it because you had to introduce her to be part of the bigger plot. And I'm like, it's a fun movie. And this is their version of Supergirl. And, and you have a lot of 90s nostalgia and it was fun. But yeah, you just bring it all together into one person. That can do everything.
Yeah, when they're having that big battle at the end of, I forget which, the one where Thanos is, they're having that huge one.
The Endgame movie, yeah.
Yeah, she just that was it. And I loved the one about her, the 90s one. I thought it was actually brilliant. I was absolutely cracking up the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the best out of the Marvel universe out of all the 20 some odd movies they've made to tell this massive story, and yet they're going to keep going. But I'm like, it was fun and as a way to set up how the Avenger Initiative was going to be. And I'm like, and again, the 90s nostalgia, which, we're almost 30 years removed now, which that makes me feel old because I'm a 90s kid and graduated high school in 96. Yeah. But anyway, that was a perfect answer.
When she lands on the blockbuster, doesn't she land on a block? Hilarious.
I know. And there's millennials. What is Blockbuster?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I loved it.
We just click the TV. We actually had to go to the video store and bring stuff home.
Yeah, and I'm older than you, so we had Betamax. We had the whole beta VHS,
I always laugh. I always love to tell this great story about my grandmother. In the 80s, her kids for their 40th wedding anniversary all chipped in and, bought a VCR for them, when they were like $900. And they thought this was great, loved it, recorded everything, blah, blah, blah. And then they turned around and used retirement money to buy each of their children's families VCRs. But the first thing she did was she figured out you could go tape to tape. And because we are a Star Wars family, she hooked 3 VCRs up to one and put the entire Star Wars trilogy on a VHS tape. Yes, my grandmother, prim and proper, loved God, high moral, is the original pirate.
Wow. Oh my God, best grandmother ever.
Exactly. And I still have that tape in a box somewhere.
Oh my God.
It doesn't work really well. But yeah, I'm just like, that's what we used to have to do. Now you just download everything and yeah, no, it's incredible. Hey, so Marcus, do you know also that Rutland has a big Batman connection? I do actually. I thought you were going to ask me about that. No, when I heard the name, I knew there was some kind of connection. Yeah. That's come out about Batman. So I didn't know it at the time, but I found out about it when I did a little research on the town. So, yeah, and that Halloween parade, that is the end of the film, that's in some of the 70s Batman comics, I think. So anyway. Yeah, I knew there was a little tie in there, and like I said, I'd heard the name. So, and yes, we could go on and on about Batman and that whole universe and stuff. But yeah, it's always a nice thing. Our comic book girl will love the little tie-in to that, because I mentioned something to her when we were doing these interviews, that we were going to be doing interviews today. She's like, Rutland, that sounds really like, yes, it's connected to a Batman. It is. And there's a Batman mural. I don't know if you caught that, but there's one shot where you can see there's this big, huge Batman mural in the town. So I guess I didn't see, but that's actually awesome. You know what? Any town that has a Batman mural. Right? It's got to have some redeeming qualities. Right. I mean, if Philadelphia can still have the Rocky statue. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Well, thank you very much for interviewing with us. Of course. Thank you. Great answer on the nerdy question. Good luck with the film, and love to see where it's going to happen with it. Thank you so much, Marcus. Take care.